The laughter cut through the saloon like a knife through butter. Eli Brennan stood at the bar, hat in hand, dirt still caked under his fingernails from a day's work on someone else's land. He'd come into town to buy nails. Just nails. But the mercantile was closed, and the rain had started, so he ducked into the Red Canyon saloon to wait it out. That's when he saw her. She sat at a corner table, surrounded by 3 men in expensive suits, their watch chains glinting in the lamplight. They were laughing, loud, performative, the kind of laughter meant to be heard. She wasn't laughing. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her expression unreadable. Eli recognized one of the men, Thomas Hargrove, son of the wealthiest rancher in 3 counties. The kind of man who wore his privilege like a second skin, never questioning whether he deserved it. Thomas leaned back in his chair, gesturing broadly with a glass of whiskey. "I'm telling you, Catherine, you'll have everything you could ever want. A house with 12 rooms, servants, a carriage imported from Philadelphia. Your father's already agreed to the arrangement." Catherine. Eli knew the name. Everyone in the territory did. Catherine Monroe, daughter of Judge Monroe, a woman educated in Boston, refined, untouchable. She'd returned to Wyoming 6 months ago, and every eligible man within 100 miles had been circling ever since. She glanced up, and for just a moment, her eyes met Eli's across the room. He looked away quickly, feeling heat rise to his face. He didn't belong in this conversation, didn't belong in the same room as people like them. He turned back to the bar, intending to finish his water and leave. "Who's that?" "Eli Frotze." Thomas Hargrove's voice, loud and mocking, echoed through the saloon. "Hey you, cowboy." Eli turned slowly. Thomas was staring at him, a cruel smile playing at his lips. "I'm talking to you. I heard you." Thomas stood, swaggering over with his drink still in hand. His friends followed, grinning like wolves. "You look familiar. Don't you work for my father?" "I did. Last spring." "That's right. Mucking out stables, if I remember correctly." Thomas laughed, and his friends joined in. "What brings you into town?" "Finally saved up enough pennies for a drink." Eli's jaw tightened. "Just waiting out the rain." "Noble." Thomas took a sip of his whiskey, eyeing Eli with barely concealed contempt. "Tell me something, cowboy. What's it like, knowing you'll never amount to anything? Never own land, never have a family, never be more than a hired hand scraping by on other men's charity." The saloon had gone quiet. Every eye was on them now. "Eli met Thomas gaze, steady." "It's honest work." "Honest." Thomas snorted. "That's what poor men say when they've got nothing else." He turned to Catherine, who was still sitting at the table, watching. "This is what I'm talking about, my dear. Men like this, they don't understand ambition. They're content to live small lives, never aspiring to anything greater." Catherine stood. She moved with deliberate grace, crossing the room until she stood beside Thomas. She looked at Eli, really looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. "What's your name?" she asked. "Eli. Eli Brennan." She nodded slowly, then turned to Thomas. "I'd like to leave now." Thomas blinked, surprised. "Catherine. Now." Her tone left no room for argument. Thomas's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly, offering his arm. She ignored it, walking toward the door alone. Thomas and his friends followed, shooting Eli one last mocking glance before disappearing into the rain. The saloon erupted in conversation the moment they were gone. Eli stood there, still holding his hat, feeling every eye on him. He left without a word. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. Eli walked toward his horse, a tired mare named Clover, when he heard footsteps behind him. "Mr. Brennan." He turned. Catherine Monroe stood in the rain, her dress already soaked, her hair coming loose from its pins. She looked nothing like the polished woman from the saloon. She looked real. "Mum. I wanted to apologize," she said. "For Thomas. He had no right to speak to you that way." Eli shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. Perhaps not. But I wanted to say it anyway. She hesitated, then stepped closer. Tell me something. Do you believe what he said? That honest work means nothing. Eli studied her for a long moment. I believe a man's worth isn't measured by what he owns. It's measured by what he does when no one's watching. She smiled, small but genuine. I believe that too. For a moment, neither of them moved. The rain fell softly around them, muffling the sounds of the town. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. Eli stood there, watching her go, knowing he'd just met someone who would change everything. 3 days later, Eli was repairing fence posts on the outskirts of town when he saw the carriage. It was small, elegant, pulled by a single black horse. It stopped at the edge of his work site, and Catherine Monroe stepped out. He straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. Miss Monroe. Mr. Brennan. She walked toward him, picking her way carefully over the uneven ground. She wore a simpler dress today, still expensive but practical. I hope I'm not interrupting. Just fixing fence. It can wait. He set down the hammer, suddenly aware of how he must look. Dirty, sunburned, nothing like the polished men she was used to. What brings you out here? She glanced around, taking in the expanse of open land, the distant mountains, the endless sky. I wanted to talk to you. Away from town. Away from prying eyes. Eli fronet. About what? About a proposition. His stomach tightened. I'm listenin'. She took a breath, as if steadying herself. My father is insisting I marry Thomas Hargrove. He's already negotiated the terms with Thomas's father. The wedding is set for 6 weeks from now. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm not going to marry him. Eli blinket. You're not. No. She met his gaze, unflinching. But my father won't listen to reason. He believes Thomas is a suitable match because of his wealth, his connections. He doesn't care that Thomas is cruel, arrogant, and incapable of seeing anyone as his equal. What does this have to do with me? She hesitated, then said, I want you to marry me instead. The words hung in the air like smoke. Eli stared at her, certain he'd misheard. What? I need to be married to someone other than Thomas. Someone my father can't dismiss. Someone who… She stopped, searching for the right words. Someone good. You don't know me. I know enough. She stepped closer. I know you work hard. I know you stood up to Thomas without flinching. I know you believe in things that matter. Her voice softened. And I know you're not doing this for money, because you don't have any. Eli shook his head, overwhelmed. Miss Monroe, I can't. I'm not asking you to love me, she said quickly. I'm asking you to help me escape a future I don't want. In exchange, I'll help you. My father owns land, good land with water and grazing. If we marry, he'll have no choice but to settle a portion of it on us. You could build something real. A ranch. A life. Eli looked at her, this woman who'd walked into his world like a lightning strike, offering him everything he'd ever wanted. And all she was asking in return was his name. Why me? He asked quietly. She smiled, sad and honest. Because you're the only man I've met in this territory who doesn't see me as something to own. Eli exhaled slowly, his mind racing. This was insane. He barely knew her. She barely knew him. But he could see the desperation in her eyes, the same desperation he'd seen in men trapped by drought, by debt, by circumstances beyond their control. She needed a way out. And maybe so did he. If we do this, he said carefully, it has to be real. I won't pretend to be your husband in public and a stranger in private. I won't lie to people. Neither will I. And if you change your mind, if you wake up one day and realize you made a mistake, you have to tell me. No regrets. No resentment. She nodded. Agreed. Eli extended his hand. Then we have a deal. She took it, her grip firm and steady. The news spread through town like wildfire. By the time Eli walked into the mercantile the next day, half the town was already whispering. He could feel their eyes on him, curious, judgmental, disbelieving. The clerk, a wiry man named Horace, leaned over the counter as Eli paid for his nails. "Heard you're marrying Catherine Monroe." "That's right." Horace whistled low. "Hell of a thing. Lot of folks saying you don't deserve her." Eli met his gaze, calm. "Maybe they're right. Thomas Hargrove's been telling everyone you tricked her. That you're some kind of con man. Let him talk." Horace shook his head, bemused. "You got steel in you, Brennan. I'll give you that." Eli took his nails and left, knowing the whispers would only get louder. He didn't care. Because when he looked at Catherine, he didn't see a prize to be won or a fortune to be gained. He saw someone who'd chosen him when she could have chosen anyone, and that was worth more than all the judgment in the world. The wedding took place 2 weeks later in Judge Monroe's parlor. It was a small affair. Just the judge, his wife, Catherine, Eli, and a circuit preacher who happened to be passing through. No guests, no celebration, no fanfare. Catherine wore a simple blue dress. Eli wore the only suit he owned, borrowed from a friend who'd worn it at his own wedding years ago. When the preacher asked if they took each other as husband and wife, Eli said, "I do," and meant it. Catherine said the same. Judge Monroe looked like he'd swallowed glass. After the ceremony, the judge pulled Eli aside, his expression hard. "I'm doing this because my daughter insisted. But understand this, Brennan, if you hurt her, if you fail her, I will make your life hell." Eli nodded. "Understood, sir." The judge glared at him a moment longer, then walked away. Catherine touched Eli's arm gently. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For not walking away." They moved into a small cabin on the edge of Judge Monroe's land, a modest structure with 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, and a leaking roof. Eli spent the first 3 days patching holes and reinforcing the walls while Catherine unpacked what little they had. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. For a while it was peaceful. Then Thomas Hargrove came. Eli was outside, splitting wood, when he heard the horses. He looked up to see Thomas and 4 of his men riding toward the cabin, their faces grim. Eli set down the axe, his pulse quickening. Thomas dismounted, striding forward with barely contained fury. "You son of a bitch!" Eli stood his ground. "Thomas, you think you can steal my bride and get away with it? I didn't steal anyone. She made her choice." Thomas's face twisted with rage. "She didn't choose you. She was confused, manipulated. She knew exactly what she was doing." Thomas stepped closer, his fists clenched. "You're nothing, Brennan. A dirt poor nobody with no future. What could you possibly offer her?" Eli met his gaze, steady. "Respect." The word hung in the air like a slap. Thomas's jaw tightened. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe. But it's done." Thomas looked past Eli toward the cabin. "Where is she?" "That's none of your business. I want to hear it from her. I want her to tell me she chose this." The cabin door opened and Catherine stepped out. She walked toward them calmly, her expression composed. "Thomas." He turned to her, his anger faltering. "Catherine, this is insane. You can't possibly." "I can," she said firmly. "And I did. I married Eli because I wanted to. Not because I was confused, or manipulated, or desperate. Because he's a good man." Thomas stared at her, disbelief and hurt flickering across his face. "I could have given you everything." "You could have given me things," she corrected. "That's not the same." Thomas looked between them, his expression darkening. "You'll regret this. Both of you." He turned, mounted his horse, and rode off, his men following in silence. Eli watched them go, his chest tight. Catherine stood beside him, her hand finding his. "He'll try to make trouble." "I know. Are you afraid?" Eli looked down at her, this woman who'd risked everything to choose her own path. "No." She smiled, small but genuine. "Good. Neither am I." That night, they sat together by the fire, the only sound the crackling of burning wood. Catherine stared into the flames, her expression distant. Eli watched her, wondering what she was thinking, whether she regretted marrying him, whether she was already counting the days until she could leave. "Tell me about yourself," she said suddenly. "Eli blinket. What do you want to know?" "Anything. Everything." She turned to look at him. "We're married, Eli. But I don't know you." He leaned back, considering. "There's not much to tell. I grew up in Missouri. My parents died when I was 12, cholera. I worked on farms, ranches, wherever I could find work. Came out here 5 years ago, hoping to save enough to buy land. Hasn't happened yet. But you still hope. Always." She smiled softly. "That's why I chose you." Eli fronet. "What do you mean?" "Men like Thomas, they don't hope. They expect. They believe the world owes them everything, so they never have to fight for it." She paused. "But you've fought for everything you have. You understand that nothing is guaranteed. That makes you dangerous. Dangerous. To men who think they're entitled to everything." Her expression softened. "And it makes you worth trusting." Eli looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the polished daughter of a judge, but a woman who'd been trapped by expectations her entire life, finally breaking free. "What about you?" he asked. "Why did you come back to Wyoming?" Her smile faded. "Because my mother asked me to. She was dying. She wanted to see me one last time before—" She stopped, her voice catching. "She died 3 months after I arrived. My father hasn't been the same since. He's trying to control everything because he couldn't control that." Eli reached out, covering her hand with his. "I'm sorry." She looked down at their joined hands, her eyes glistening. "You miss her. Every day." "I know." They sat in silence for a long time, the fire burning low, the night pressing in around them. Finally, Catherine spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. Do you think we can make this work? A real marriage, not just an arrangement?" Eli considered the question carefully. "I think if we're honest with each other, if we choose each other every day, we have a chance. And if we fail? Then at least we'll know we tried." She smiled, wiping her eyes. "That's the most hopeful thing anyone's ever said to me." Eli squeezed her hand gently. "Then I'll keep saying it." Section 5. Full resolution plus epilogue. 3 months passed. Eli and Catherine built their life slowly, carefully, like constructing a house from salvaged wood. They worked the land together, planting a small garden, repairing fences, caring for the few animals they'd acquired. It wasn't easy. The work was hard, the winters harsh, the money always tight. But they were happy. Eli learned that Catherine was funny, sharp-witted and quick with a joke when he least expected it. She learned that Eli sang while he worked, old songs his mother had taught him, off-key and earnest. They learned each other's silences, each other's fears, each other's hope. And somewhere along the way the arrangement became real. Then, one morning, Judge Monroe rode up to the cabin. Eli stepped outside, tense. The judge hadn't spoken to them since the wedding. Monroe dismounted slowly, his expression weary. "Eli." "Judge." Monroe looked past him toward the cabin. "Is Catherine inside?" "She is." The judge nodded, then looked back at Eli. "I owe you an apology." "Eli blinker, stunnet." "Sir." "I was wrong about you," Monroe said quietly. "I thought you were after her money, her name. I thought you'd use her and discard her. But I've been watching. I see how you treat her, how you work, how you've built something here with nothing but sweat and stubbornness." He paused. "You're a better man than I gave you credit for." Eli didn't know what to say. Monroe reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. "This is the deed to 200 acres of land, good land, with water. It's yours. Free and clear." Eli stared at the paper, his heart pounding. "Judge, You don't have to thank me. Just take care of my daughter." "I will." Monroe nodded, then turned and walked back to his horse. He mounted, looked back one last time, and rode away. Catherine appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. What just happened? Eli handed her the deed, his hands shaking. Your father gave us land. She stared at the document, tears welling in her eyes. Eli. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. We did it, he whispered. We actually did it. She laughed, a sound full of joy and disbelief. We did. Years later, Eli would stand on the porch of the ranch they'd built together, a sprawling, thriving operation with cattle, horses, and a house with 5 rooms, and think about the day Catherine had walked into his life. She'd been mocked for choosing him, called foolish, naive, desperate. But she'd known something they didn't. That wealth isn't measured in gold or land or titles. It's measured in the way someone looks at you when you're covered in dirt and exhausted. In the way they choose you, every single day, even when it's hard. In the way they build a life with you, brick by brick, until what you have together is stronger than anything the world can throw at you. Catherine stepped onto the porch, her hand resting on her swollen belly, and smiled at him. What are you thinking about? Eli pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. Just how rich I am. She laughed, soft and warm. Damn right you are. And as the sun set over the land they'd built together, Eli knew, beyond doubt, beyond fear, beyond anything the world could say, that he was the richest man alive. Not because of what he owned, but because of who had chosen him.